people, purpose, potential, and prosperity. It's time to go beyond business with Sean Nicholas. Craig, welcome to the show.
It's great to be here, Sean.
I'm really excited about finding out more about your story and going beyond business with you. Just for the audience, just give them a quick, short snapshot of what you occupy your time with in business.
Yeah, so I balance two roles at the moment. I have Triathlon ACT, where I'm executive director there, so I spend a lot of time with what's been my passion for the last 30 years and sort of giving back to the sport. And the other half of my time is spent with Energy to Perform, where I do a lot of work around high performance work with CEOs and leaders, coaches, and a few bigger projects as well that kind of building up some new space in high performance. So really enjoying it.
Yeah, excellent. And so you've got a background in endurance sports and elite sports and running sports programs, and now your focus is on dealing with CEOs and business. What are some of the synergies that you see that, say, a CEO can take from what you've learned from endurance sports?
One of the things that I've noticed with CEOs and leaders is they don't really consider themselves as performers or high performance people. You know, they look at athletes or dancers, singers, speakers kind of being in that high performance realm, but don't really consider themselves. Now, what you do as a CEO is high performance. You need to deliver that if you want your business to succeed and be successful. High performance is the same no matter what spectrum it's in, the same skill sets. Yep. So that's kind of one of the things I notice is just giving them confidence to say, hey, you know what? You are a high performing person or you are a performance person. Let's take you to that next level.
Yeah.
And how can we do that? Yeah. So a lot of the time, you know, they're starting to go, all right, let's focus on emotional intelligence, or they start going to this higher level sort of high performance skill sets, but they don't actually have the baseline, right? And as you know, if you don't have exercise right, if you're not eating properly, if you don't free the mind, and probably most importantly, if you don't recover, if you don't get that sleep at night, if you don't get that rest away from focusing on business and focusing on what you're doing all the time, then you're really going to struggle. Like your ceiling is going to be here.
Yeah.
Like that, and it's probably your talent. Like you're not actually going any further. So to go further, you've got to get those basic fundamentals right, which are the core to high performance.
Yeah. And with that high performance, one of the key things for CEOs and business owners is their high performance decision making, which is their cognitive ability to make decisions that impact a lot of people. And what you talked about, all the other physical aspects of it, all build a resource for that cognitive ability to draw on when they're making those decisions. One thing that you can expand on is the importance of rest.
Yep. Because
since business has been around, it's all about go, 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 always on, always on. What's your feeling about CEOs always being on?
Yeah, so something quite interesting. When you're an athlete, you have triggers to make sure that you haven't gone too far, right? Yeah. So you're training. If you work really hard, if you overdo it, you feel it the next session, or you feel it in the next event, and it's really strong. It's a very powerful trigger. When we devise plans or training for CEOs, for athletes, it's all based around recovery, because that's where the performance gains occur. Whereas, say, CEOs and leaders or people in the workplace, unless it's a really physical job, generally your fatigue is more psychological.
Yep.
And it is very gradual. Like it gradually fatigues, your performance gradually declines. There's a little bit of physical fatigue that's going on, but it's mainly that psychological. And so what happens is, as it slowly comes down, unless you have a catastrophic event, right? So if you have a catastrophic event, you'll drop really fast.
Yeah.
But it's really slow. So the body is so clever and it continuously adapts. So as you're coming down, you don't really notice it, but your performance is dropping, your energy is dropping throughout the year, you're getting closer to that Christmas break, or if in the Northern Hemisphere, the European summer, and you just keep going, and you don't realize it, you keep working, you're like, okay, I can still go another hour, I can do, one more day a week, no problems, and then you have a day off, or you go on holiday, and what happens?
You get sick.
You get
break down.
You get sick.
Yeah.
And if you've been doing it long enough, if you've really been pushing the boundaries, it'll hit you like a brick.
Yep.
And the body goes, you know what? I like that recovery.
Yeah.
You know what? I'm going to punish you because you haven't been having enough of it, so I'm going to hold you down. I'm going to hold you underneath water for a while.
Yeah.
And we're going to see how long you can last until, and just about when you're going for your last breath, we're going to let you come back up for a little bit of air and then we'll hold you down again. So that is so important. Like, it has an effect. You don't notice it, but there's an effect on yourself and your ability to perform, influence, but even more, it has a massive effect on your team members, the people around you, those that you care and love about as well. It has a massive effect on them.
Yeah, and that's basically the essence of burnout. Like, there's a big thing around burnout now, but burnout is the end symptom of a long path of this pressure always being on, not resting, not recovering, and allowing all that to come in. Share with the audience your experience of burnout, because I know it's a very personal one for you.
Yeah, definitely. And look, you know, it probably started from when I was quite young. I was someone who, I'm an A-type, success-driven person, would push the boundaries. I'd like to go, all right, someone's gone here, so can I go further? You landed on the moon, I'm going to land on Jupiter, kind of thing. And so when I was a swimmer, you know, the first time I really cooked myself, I was 15 years old.
Yeah.
And come off a massive week of swimming, and I did a set that no one had seen before. I had definitely not done it before, and gave it a crack, and the body handled it, right? Like, it just went for it. The next day, I woke up and, you know, I just started fainting, right?
Wow.
So I'm in hospital multiple times while the body's trying to recover. So I'll just keep that a bit short. That, you know, that happened when I was quite young, and I could never figure out what was going on. It then happened again when I was in my 20s. Did the same thing, just pushed, kept going, didn't hold back. I was working the 70 to 80 hours a week, loving everything I did. I stopped eating properly. I wasn't exercising. I definitely wasn't freeing the mind, and wasn't getting the recovery. And it all felt good. Like, you're just like, yeah, I can do it. And for me, being an endurance athlete, I was so used to waiting for that physical fatigue, but it wasn't there. And in the end, I actually had taken myself so low that I started flatlining and fainting for very long periods. And so I was in hospital for, you know, a solid 7 days, where they had the crash cart there. They're waiting to try and, not knowing whether they had to revive me or not. And, you know, it's pretty scary for those around me. For me, I'm still fairly bulletproof, right? I'm still in my 20s, so I'm like, you know, I'm bulletproof, I'm going to get through this. But to see the shock on the people around me was pretty scary. So, you know, there were 3 times where it happened, and then that light switch come on. I went, you know what? You've been an athlete, you've been a coach at a very high level as well. You know all the tools, why aren't you using them? And so that's when I started flipping the model around and going, you know what? I need to start periodizing. So looking at how I plan recovery, how I look at the work. So it's not like 70 to 80 hours a week solid for 11 or 12 months. It is, okay, well, let's hold that 40 hours a week. And every now and then I may need to go 70 to 80 hours a week or 60 hours a week. But if I do that, I plan so that straight after it, I've got a recovery period. Because I know if I don't do it, it's going to catch up with me long time. And I don't want to have that effect on the people around me, the people that care and love me, right? I don't want to see them distraught again. Yeah,
and also if you're running a business, you get knocked out, that impacts the business, the employees and the team, and what happens then? You know, what's the plan if you're knocked out of the game?
Yeah.
It's something that I love the analogy of flipping it and bringing the actual real sports training and sports thinking into it, because coming into this show, I was thinking about it, and really, and you can explain this in more detail, when we from outsiders of elite sport see the elite sports people, we just see them performing at their best in competition, at their peak, pushing themselves to the limit. We don't see the weeks of rest and recovery before that event. Even here in Australia, even if it's a rugby team or a football team, we see the 2 hours on a weekend where they're pushing to the limit. We don't see then that during season time, the rest of the week is recovery. Yeah. Is that what you're talking about, recovery with purpose?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, right on. Recovery with purpose. So when you plan out, say, we'll talk an athlete and then we'll put it into business sense. So when you plan out an athlete, you look and go, okay, well, we need to make sure that we've got recovery in every day. So there's a recovery inside the session.
Yeah.
You need to make sure that over a period of time, so there might be, say, 3 weeks of building up of workload and stress load, and then 1 week of deloading.
Yep.
And that's where, so your performance so you're working hard, and then your performance drops down. And then as you drop the workload off, your performance comes higher. And if you get that recovery balance right with the workload, then you go to a higher level.
Yeah.
Now it's no different in being a CEO or a leader. You know, there are times where you might be traveling lots.
Yep.
There's times where you have lots of meetings. There's times where you've got really firm, tight deadlines that you've got to meet. So it's your job to make sure that you plan ahead and go, okay, well, I know the next 3 weeks are going to be busy. I'm traveling lots. That 4th week, I'm going to schedule 0 meetings, 0 travel. And so if you've got kids, you might take the week off, you might take a couple of days off, or you may just knock off at 3 o'clock and go pick up the kids from school, go do some things with them, right? The real life things that are important. And that allows your mind and body to switch off and your brain to switch off a little bit. For some people, it might be exercising. That's where they get that recharge again, and it re-energizes them. So I think that's a really important part. And it's not just, say, day, over the week, over the month. It's over a whole year.
Yeah.
And then it might be over a whole 5-year period or the rest of your career. I have a friend of mine, Anne Gripper, who does this amazingly well. So she sets herself up, every role is 5 years, and she has a whole year off.
Yep. Okay, wow.
So she might go cycling around the world,
Yep.
She might go study for a year, she might set up a foundation, which she did once. And I think it's a great approach. You know, like you go, okay, that's the amount of time I can dedicate to that role, because they are all consuming when you're leading something.
It is.
And then have a whole year off. You know, why wait till you're 65 to have your retirement? Why not have mini retirements along the way?
Yeah.
You know, if you don't, you're going to end up overweight, tired, stressed,
burnt out,
not have the energy at 65 to actually use the time that you have to go and have a bit of fun and do the things you want.
And along the way, you'll find you get better performance. Like in those periods of when you need to perform, by having those breaks in between, you'll get better performance. Like you said, if you have a 3-week performance block and then have a week off, the next 3 weeks after that are going to be a much better performance than not having that break.
Yeah, you don't want your performance to go from here down to here over a year. You want it to kind of just wave a little bit at the top. And if possible, you want it to improve. And you can do that. You can do that as a business person. Your brain is like a muscle.
Yeah.
And so it's constantly evolving. So you stress it, it'll come down, its performance will come down, and then it will produce more neurons, it will fire them in different ways, it will have better pathways. So you start, as you say, better cognitive ability, your decision making is a lot more effective, things like empathy, and the way you interact with people is so much better. And
that periodization, because I'm learning a lot about this now, is that periodization is actually a form of conditioning. So an elite athlete that, say, is now appearing in the Olympic Games or that level, over, say, 10 years, they've done this over and over and over again, and they've built this base, then build another base on top of that with breaks in between. Yeah, that's conditioning.
Yeah, definitely. So if you look at an Olympic athlete, generally the year after, if there's someone that's good enough to go to multiple Olympics, not too many of them, but if they do have that chance, they will drop right off that year afterwards. They will probably take 6 months. Some of them go do another sport.
Yes.
And then they will start to ramp up again leading in, because they can't stay at that intensity that long. Now, if we put back to business, if we look at CEOs that go in or entrepreneurs, right? They throw everything at it when they come into a new role. They can't sustain that energy and that level of drive. No. It drops, right? And then sometimes they can get it back up, or they leave, or they get fired, because they've gone too far down.
It's such a great insight, because for so long, and we're just told, and even for a workforce, it's just like grind. No wonder there's so much burnout and disengagement and that in the workplace. So I'm just now thinking in terms of a workforce for business owners and CEOs. How can they implement? Do you work with the CEOs to get them to work on themselves, but then implement this into strategies for their work teams?
Yeah, that's the key, right? So like with any change, if you don't get it right at the top first, it doesn't matter what you do underneath, it'll fail. Because they're still they're balancing between the expectations that haven't changed at the top and going, well, I know I need to do this, but I want to get a new role, I want to get promoted, I don't want to lose my job, I've got a family support, so they will slowly start to come back into the same habits that were formed up above. So yes, we start with the CEOs first, and then once we've got them, then we start to build it out. And it's important, right? Because a lot of the times, we have project managers, right? So they manage a project, and then someone else has another project and it overlays. Someone else has another one that overlays. Well, when are you getting a break? And it's interesting, right? There's a person in the USA, and they call it the 12-week year. Great ideas, but it goes 12 weeks, we do a project, it's all boxed in, and then we start the next one. Well, where's the recovery? When do you have time to reflect? When do you need to have time to ensure that implementation is working right? Because you may need to change it a little bit.
Tweak.
So too often we're just going, what's the new shiny thing? What's the new project? Let's add another one, and boom, nothing's working properly. They explode, right? So how often do we actually see projects really fulfill their potential? It's rare.
It is rare, and then also you're just stacking on legacy items from projects that maybe haven't worked, rather than having a contingency or a continuance of growth.
So I think the whole project management industry needs a shift, because they just focus in this little bubble of what does one project look like. They look at, there's the timeline, there's where we start, it's got to get done, but there's no factoring there of recovery, there's no factoring in there of what happens when we lose a staff member. What happens if someone has a high stress load in their life? Right, you've got to take that into consideration. So it's extremely important. So talking about, what do you do with these CEOs? Well, one of the first things we do is go in and go, okay, well, let's look at your schedule. And we'll look at it not just with the CEO, the leader, or the executive. We look at it with the PA. Now the reason we do that is because normally the CEOs lie. Right? They're like, oh, I'm not going to give everything away. Like the ego kicks in, right? And they're just trying to make sure, oh, I'm not that bad. And they kind of start to realize. So what we want to see is, okay, how many hours are actually scheduled? Let's look at what time is scheduled first. Then look at how much preparation time you're doing beforehand. How much review time you're doing afterwards. Because it's so important. And that's the kind of that's the first kind of lower level. We've got other things we're looking at, but we'll just look at this part first. Now, when you look at, say, performance, and you say fill your 40 hours a week, and you're probably not doing 40 hours, you're probably doing 50 or 60, and say that you've got 30 hours of that scheduled for meetings. How are you realistically going to actually perform? How are you going to turn up, show up, energize, lift the energy in the room, and inspire people to
meeting after meeting after
let's go. And so often we sit in rooms and we watch someone come in and they get their papers out and flick it and go, okay, we're on to this, such and such, can you tell me what we're doing, right? The room has already deflated. They know it's not going to happen. So one of the things we do is we're going from CEO periodization now into CEO presence. So how can we ensure that you come and you bring performance every day? Now, that's what an athlete does. That's what a singer does. That's what an artist does. That's what a speaker does. I mean, as a speaker, if you don't turn up and show up and bring the energy,
in the moment.
You don't get the next paid gig.
No.
And we kind of have it too easy sometimes in the workforce. We get a paycheck, right? So it's guaranteed paycheck for most people.
And sometimes with that performance and that presence that you're talking about, for people to understand is in an organisation, the workforce might only see the CEO 1 hour out of the month.
Yeah.
And that's what they're basing their whole, enthusiasm for work on, is their hour in a big meeting with the CEO. And so if they're not getting anything from the CEO, that leads to that disengagement as well. They lose that connection, they don't get the energy from the CEO. Why isn't the CEO bringing it? Why should I bring it if the CEO's not?
You set the temperature in the room.
Yeah.
You set the energy. It doesn't come from the Energizer Bunny in the room. It comes from you as a leader.
Yeah.
You set the tone of everything that happens, from the meeting with your PA right through to the big decision-making partnership agreements.
Yes.
And you want to be able to walk into the room and you want people to kind of smile and get that energy and lean forward, right? You want them to lean in.
Mm.
Think about that next time you go into a meeting and see and just
see if people
see if you can come out, see if they come forward, see if they sit forward on their seat, sit up straight.
What's he talking about today?
Yeah, read the room and read that temperature in the room, and it's so important. We're starting to do some work now and talking to a couple of universities around. Let's see if we can take, say, 100 CEOs.
Yep.
And we'll look at all their schedules, we'll look at all their times, we'll map it out, and then we'll go, okay, there's 20 of you, you're going to keep doing what you're doing.
Yep.
There's 20, you're going to have 20% less meetings. Then we're going to take another 20, you have 40% less. Next 20, 60% less, and then 80% less.
Yep.
And then we will teach you the skills around persuasion, influence, bringing the energy, and bring those aspects in so that when you walk into that room, people are engaged and excited and want to be part of something, and you want to make sure that you have got clarity and certainty and really trust what you're saying and what you're delivering, because you have a small moment.
Yep, exactly.
Very small moments to make a change with your organization, make a change with your team, your company. If you're going into sign a new partnership agreement, collaboration, whatever it may be, if you walk in there all negative and like, okay, good guys, we're doing this today.
It's amazing. No matter the processes, the business model, the systems that you have in place, business performance is still so reliant on the energy and performance of the leader, of the CEO.
I'll swing this back into sport.
Yeah.
You have a pinnacle event, you have the Olympics, for instance. Most athletes, most coaches, most high performance staff might get to go to one. Right? They don't get to go to 2 or 3. That's very rare. And and those that do really excel the next time. So everyone throws every single bit of energy, their whole life. They just put the blinkers on, they narrow everything in. And so what we see is, even if the athletes are in pristine condition and are ready to go, they don't always perform on that international stage, perform at the time they need to. And a lot of it comes down to the energy and the environment around them.
Yep.
And so what we find a lot is coaches, high performance staff, by the time they get to the Olympics, they've thrown everything in. The pressure comes off just a little bit when you go into this little bubble. Yeah. And they either get sick, they kind of get overwhelmed, some of them go missing. Yeah. And as an athlete in that situation, you are so highly tuned to the smallest changes, smallest levels of doubt, smallest levels of excitement. Yeah. And if you show some doubt and some kind of negativity in the way you walk in through the room or you gesture, that has a profound effect. Yep. So
there's only like a tiny percent of difference between Usain Bolt and the person that finished last in the race.
Exactly. So now I'm starting to do some work with a sport that's getting ready for Tokyo Olympics. Yep. And we'll only be able to do some basic stuff because we only have 1 year to go. Yeah. And then we'll look to the long term around how we can really shift that, because we are seeing a lot of burnout in coaches and they know this stuff.
Yeah.
right? They've done the periodization. They know how to bring performance out.
But knowing it and doing it, do you find that in CEOs? Like even after
Yeah.
educating them, the implementation. How do we get to for people to implement and do what they're coached to do, and also if they're coaching it, do what they're coaching.
And one of the little challenges around that, unless you've had a massive stress load, or you've had a heart attack, or your mate's had something, it can be a challenge to really see through the fog.
Yeah.
And so it's trying to identify that. That's a lot of things I do, is like, even if it's the smallest amount, I'm like, okay, see that.
Yes.
All right, that's the effect you're having. Now, if you keep going, your effect's going to look like this, and we try and find an example for them to see that.
Yeah.
And then it's like, okay, now we need to build it out.
Yeah.
And now we need to spend some time on this, and you've got to go one thing at a time, and we have to work through it, because if you don't, at some point it's gonna hit you.
And that's the hard thing for people to not realise and project, that little tweak in the path could be heading towards burnout rather than high performance.
It's a fine balance.
Yeah.
It's a very fine balance, and we see it all the time.
But I like the concept of having that periodization. Just getting back to that, is you have those breaks where you can review and reflect, and you can say, what are the things that we did well? What didn't we do well? What can we tweak going into next time? And if we extrapolate it on that, will it serve us, or will it sabotage us?
Yep. So it's not only that too. We've got to be a bit careful of that, because we do see some CEOs and leaders that when they do have a break, that's when they focus on the business rather than in the business.
Okay, yeah.
So we're going to make sure we separate that out, because you're still working on it. It's still your brain. You actually have to be able to switch away from it.
Okay, so they have to detach.
You have to detach.
Yeah.
And the best leaders and CEOs will detach. They will step outside in the weekends. They won't answer their phones at night. They will not touch emails except in work hours. They have a hobby, and they have something else that, it might take a bit of energy, but it's a different type of energy. It lets the mental recovery occur for their work, which is so important.
That's excellent. And so tell me, I'm interested to, obviously you've got a lot of stories from CEOs. What are some of the common things where they have that aha moment that they actually get it? What do they feed back to you in terms of what they get out of learning from you?
Yeah, so I think for a lot of them it's like, they start to feel a little bit more energetic, right? So they're like, or someone will feed back to them, hey, you know what? You're looking good today. You look relaxed. Where have you been? What's happened? It's normally that. It's normally the staff going, you know what? You're different. What did you do? Like, have you had a new haircut? What's going on? You get a new car. And they just start to realize, I think that's more of it. It's when they get the feedback from their staff members going, you know what? There has been a change here, and I like it, and I'm going to tell you about it.
That's excellent.
Because they generally won't tell you if they don't like what you're doing.
Yeah.
People will sit back, but if you do something and they notice the energy shift, they will tell you.
Yeah.
It will come out.
That's excellent. And what on the flip side of that, what do you see them struggling with in terms of implementing these practices or this mindset? What do you think they struggle with?
Deadlines they've already got in place. And they go, I've got that deadline. I'm like, well, okay, who else in the organisation can look after that?
Okay.
And we need to sit down and go, is that actually going to help your business?
Yep.
Right? Is it worth it?
Yep.
If you do have really important projects in place, what can we get rid of?
Yeah.
What's not working for you? What can someone else do?
Yeah.
Or what can we just...
And so putting the pressure in perspective.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. You've got responsibilities, right?
Yeah.
So we can't just from one day flip the switch and go, hey guys, I'm off next week.
People are probably thinking, oh yeah, I'm the CEO. Yeah, I'm off to Alaska for a month,
And
off the grid.
It takes time. Any sort of change, there's a process in place, and you've got to be able to slowly build it in. You can't just go flip the switch on one day. That will have a major effect on other people. It's dynamic, right? You realise as well that the workplace has so many different attributes that pull together, and so it's longevity. Like I won't do a one-on-one session for someone once. I won't even do it a couple of times. Like for me, it's generally a minimum 12 months. Like there might be a 6-month program if I can see that you're already on your way, but it takes time because of the huge dynamics involved.
Yeah, and it gets back to that conditioning. You're not going to change overnight. You need to build on each skill, And tell us about that. Tell us about CEOs sort of differentiating themselves in the marketplace and building on these skills to, one, carve out their mark in what they're doing.
Yeah, so I think, for a lot of the CEOs, they just get caught in that blinker state and they're heading down that path. So it's just being able to just pull them back for a bit, right?
Yep.
Let's pull you back. Let's go, okay, what's a priority to you? And then making sure we get that recovery in place, right? To get those in place. And generally what you find is they go, you know what? Where I'm heading is not really what I'm passionate about, or what's my purpose. And then it's sitting with them and go, okay, what's some goals? Let's some goals around that, and how can we redefine your brand as you as a person so that you can create that mind shift to go down that new pathway.
Yeah.
Right? There's probably a whole lot of limiting beliefs that are sitting there. How can we flip out of those, and what can we create that new belief so that when we put you in that new state of mind,
yeah,
that it's got some why behind it, got some purpose behind it, and it's coming from the heart.
Yeah, and you're finding that the CEOs are more responsive to that, of connecting with what they're passionate about.
Yeah.
And sharing that. Not often. They sometimes connect with what they're passionate about, but they don't overtly express it in their role. You're finding that sort of happening now with people you work with?
Yeah, I mean, there are some that will hesitate. I find with most, they'll get emotional, right? So there's a questioning technique to it where you got to build a little bit of trust, and then, you know what, we're going to take you deep here, because if we don't, you're not going to make the change.
Yeah.
Or very unlikely to make that change. And until you get that emotional connection of, you know what, this really means something to me, and if I don't change, I may lose something that I really want.
Yep.
And I may not be able to achieve what I'm really looking for. So that aspect of drilling down and getting them vulnerable, getting them emotional is so important.
Because we forget often that CEOs are human too, and
very human.
We do, and probably they're a CEO because they are passionate, that they do have purpose and they want to make a difference.
Yeah.
And finding that and having them express that, can change an organisation.
I run the Active CEO podcast.
Yep.
1 in every 3 or 4 interviews, there are tears.
Because you've tapped into why they do what they do.
Yep. Why do they do what they do, and what caused you to go down that path, right? So where's that connection? What is deep inside of you that, as you say, really means something, really matters, and it's a skill to bring that out. You got to gain trust first, right? But then it's that opportunity to just spend a bit of time and let them go, you know what, this is not really what I want, or this, there was something there that meant so much to me that I was willing to give it up, or willing to give up other things so I could go chase it.
Yeah. No, it's certainly a thing. So, Craig, why are you so passionate about what you do? Why are you so passionate about getting these CEOs to their best?
I think for me, ever since I was very young, I always looked at people and go, how can we get people healthier? How can we get people exercising more often? How can we get people smiling a lot more often? And, there's 7 billion people in the world, and I can't touch every one of those. I can't affect every one of those. So I was like, okay, how can we start to build some momentum and create a ripple effect? And the only way to do that was with the CEOs and leaders. Mm-hmm. And, with them as well is, as we talked about earlier, if you start from the bottom, you've always got this fight from the top. And you've got a huge magnet pushing you away. It's repelling you away. It's not drawing you up, it's pushing you away. So if we can work on the top, then the magnet will draw everyone else up. And I was like, that's the easiest way to make a massive difference around the world. So that's where it all started from. And then I was like, okay, well, what expertise do I have? What things am I passionate about that I can use to draw that out of people? And so that's where the Active CEO and Energy to Perform came along, and started developing out the coach periodization, the coach presence, the the coach performance aspects. And same for the CEO. So CEO performance, CEO periodization, CEO presence. So we do it with coaches as well.
Yep.
So it's the same philosophy.
Yeah.
That's behind
and this is the essence of you cracking the CEO code is what you call it.
Yeah. So breaking the CEO code come along. Like it wasn't like cracking it, because if we crack it, the code's already there.
Okay.
And it's just like, oh, how do we work inside that code? It's like no, we got to break that code because we need to develop a new one.
Yep.
We've got to build some new DNA in here.
Yep.
And we've got to change the way things are working. Obviously, World Health Organization released that burnout is an official phenomenon.
Yep.
That it's not that far away where we're going to have a royal commission into workplace wellness.
Yeah. You can see it. Yeah.
People are empowered now to speak out. So anytime people are empowered to start speaking out, that's when the real truth comes out, even though we knew it beforehand. We could see it, but because no one's talking about it, it's very hard to go dive into something. And, you look at the Royal Commission into children,
yep,
for instance, that only came out after a while when people were empowered enough to tell enough stories. So we're seeing obviously massive issues with burnout, mental health, huge, right? So a lot of people talking about mental health. The numbers on sick leave, the economic
disengagement, 70% of people disengaged at work and so on.
Huge, right?
And we spend,
on the family.
The majority of people spend their 40 to 60 hours a week in a workplace. A third of your life in a workplace. It's such a critical thing, and I love your approach of let's get to the CEOs, let's get to the leaders, and have them lead by example, by living their best and performing at their best.
If you look at change management, if you want to effect positive change management, you need to identify who the key influencers are. They may not always be the leader, right?
Yeah.
But you got to identify who the key influencers are. Now, generally in an organization, because they're the ones who hire and fire and decide what happens in the end, they are the key influencer. So if we can change the key influencer, then we can get a positive change throughout the bigger community, the bigger society. So that's the real passion and purpose behind it. Like a lot of people would go, you worked in high performance, so you think you can just put it together. No. There's a much bigger aspect to it. And what's interesting, when I stepped out of high performance and went to, say, my current role, where I deal with participation and everyone from complete beginner through to, your international athletes, I get a lot more out of seeing the first timer achieve something, out of the average everyday Joe Blog who works hard, has families, and still able to do something like a triathlon. Like I get so much out of that, probably even more than someone who's gone on to win a national title, because they have probably given up a hell of a lot more than an athlete ever does to be able to achieve something like finish a triathlon.
A personal triumph. Personal triumph.
So for me, I just love seeing people achieve something. Whether that be a show like MasterChef, or something like that. Like I just I love seeing that transformation of people. And say working in our speaking environment too, to see people go through the speaking courses and the speaking programs, and just to see that transformation change, taking away those limiting beliefs, empowering them to go, you know what, you have a story to tell, you have a story worth sharing. And it's the same in the workplace. People have skill sets that are worth sharing, that are worth utilizing, but we don't tap them because we kind of hold them back too much because our egos get in the bloody way.
So fascinating. I'm right in this, as you probably are, in this world of human resources, and you hear people talking about it, and they've talked about it for eons. People are our greatest asset and so forth, but we're not utilizing them. 70% of them are disengaged. We're burning them out. We're killing them off. Because of our workplace structures and our processes and demands we're putting on them. I just love the concept that that ripple effect, that if you get into those influencers, those CEOs, they actually see and feel and live what the people who are working really want to do. And that's just perform at their best, meet their potential, be part of something bigger than themselves. It's all those human needs that we need to bring back into the workforce, and I love that's what you're doing with the CEOs.
You're absolutely true there. like people want to do something. There's not. I don't think you're very rare would you find someone who's so lazy that they don't want to do anything in the world.
No.
And you just need to find that right question, that right bit of energy to bring that special something, from deep within, and bring it out, because that's when things really happen. Now, you kind of reminded me on something there. The number one recruitment and retention tool in the world is enjoyment. So if you're the key influencer, how can you create an enjoyable atmosphere? Because then you retain people. Now, that's the easiest way for success, is to retain people, not recruit people. It's important that you design the way you lead, the way you set up your company, the way you work your teams around enjoyment.
Yep.
And that comes from a CEO that has energy, that, yes, you've got to challenge them, because people like to be challenged. That's enjoyment as well. But you're not demanding, you're not holding them on the ground with one foot and got the hammer over top with the other one, right? It's like, let's lift them up.
Yeah. It's like you said, it's that magnetizing effect that people want to work hard for you or for the business. They want to be part of something. They want to be a community. They want to have reach their potential, and they want to contribute. People deep down want to contribute in some way.
Yeah.
And having that, I just love what you're doing with the CEOs. That shift. If you can get to as many CEOs as possible, and get that shift with the leaders. That will change the world.
And look, I can't get to everyone, and that's why I like to work with some of the coaches and like to share this knowledge, because there's 7 billion people out there. I can only get to a few of them, and let's help each other grow more here. You reminded me, when you started to talk there about people bringing energy to the room, and I'm sure you won't mind me saying, so today, just released a podcast with Sasha Sestic from On a Coffee. He took me through his whole team, through the warehouse, into the coffee shop, into where they were testing, and it was the first time, and I've never ever seen this before, where the energy just rose wherever he went. Right, you can see everyone was there, everyone was passionate, everyone was innovating, everyone was competing, everyone was happy, and it was, you literally walked into every room and the energy just went whoo, and you're like, wow. And I just sit back and I was just like, just watching. I was just big smile on my face, and I loved every single minute of it. And to see what he's been able to do there is phenomenal, and a great case study of someone who actually does a really good job of making sure that they have the weekends to themselves and their family. They make sure that people get the recovery. And in that hospitality industry, for anyone that's ever been in it is challenging to hold retention. Now, most of their staff have been around 8 to 10 years.
Wow.
Massive.
Wow.
And you talk to their staff and they're just like, what do you enjoy most? And they say, well, I wouldn't work here if it wasn't for Sasha. For the person he is. Not because he's won a world title in barista. No. And not because he's been to the Olympics as a handball player.
The atmosphere.
But because of the way he draws the best out of us. And not just us individually, but us as a team. And it's,
And the thought came to me just then, Craig, is we talk about, being successful in business. A lot of it is about disrupting the industry, coming up with new innovation and so forth. This change in mindset from CEOs and what you're saying could be the disruptor, where people don't actually have to change their business or innovate technology. They're basically disrupting with the way they're dealing with people.
And we're seeing the 4-day work week. Right, so people are testing that now. Now we haven't seen the long-term effects of it yet. But we're seeing the benefits out of those that are trying it. I've got a friend who's just started it this month. They've tested it before, but they're now fully into it. And they're seeing greater productivity. They're seeing happier people because they now feel mentally recharged when they come back after 3 days of rest. It's helping with some of their other clients because they're like, oh great, we can actually meet with you after work now. Because they're still working 40 hours a week. But they're doing it in 4 days. So, and then some of them are going, you know what, rather than having 1 hour commutes, I now have a 15-minute commute. So I feel really energetic when I arrive at work, and when I get home I'm not stressed because it's a short, easy drive. So there's lots of ways that you can look at this. There's a surfboard company, and I can't remember the name of them, and they work from, I think it's 7 or 8 in the morning till 1 o'clock in the afternoon. That's all they need to be at the work. They can do whatever they like.
Now, or it depends on the surf, where the surf's up.
Oh yeah. I thought it would be the other way, right? Because normally surf's better in the morning. But
there you go.
it is interesting to see, and you know, a lot of them will want to work longer than that, which is fine. They're allowed to.
Yeah.
But they only have to be there at those times.
Yeah.
And you know, it's amazing to see how that has worked in that environment. So there's lots of ways to be clever in it.
And I think when we talk about people being the greatest asset, innovating and disrupting in that area, from a personal point of view for the CEOs, and then feeding that through their business, instant results in terms of productivity, performance, and so forth, and not, you know, you have to invest in programs and training and coaches and so forth, but it's not the big capital investment that you have to do, and probably the long-term effects are so much better.
Well, it's much cheaper to invest in someone to help you build something like this out than it is to pay for the sick leave and hiring a new staff member.
Turnover costs, huge. Workplace health costs, burnout costs.
Effects on people's families, like the greater societal effects that occur if you don't put things in place.
Awesome, getting shivers with this whole thing. I just want people to get on board with you and get into it. So, Craig, tell us, for people listening, how do we get involved in what you're doing? How do people find out about what you're doing? How do they see the CEOs that are engaging in this?
Yeah, definitely. A good question, right? So, a couple of things. One, you can kind of start to get a little bit more feel of what I do through the Active CEO podcast, where we interview CEOs and leaders from around the world, and we tend to ask a lot of questions that dive into this, you know, throughout. You also get to hear their amazing stories as well of how they, their entrepreneurial or their business or their career, how it's developed out, where they've come from, and they're real people, and you can really feel that. But we bring out some of those real key aspects around how can you change your business, what sort of thing can you put in place so that you can deliver a better performance. There's the www.nrg2perform.com, so it's NRG number 2.
Put it across the bottom here.
Not energy, it's NRG.
That's right.
2perform.com website, so you can see what we do in that space, and then on social media. Quite often I'm producing videos, so I'll talk about different key aspects along the way. It's probably the...
Yeah, I think if people connect in those ways and just get on board with you, and that ripple effect, people start getting that thinking about it, that change in that mindset and implementing it. And we know that, you know, having experienced burnout and so forth and coming through the other side and doing things in a different way, the results are so much better and so much more enjoyable. Like you said, just so much more enjoyable.
Huge. I mean, a lot of people sit there and look at me now and go, how do you fill that in? And I said, well, I am getting the rest and recovery. I'm still playing golf. I'm still having some time just to chill out in the evening because I've got rid of a whole lot of crap as well. So everything I do is focused on how will it improve the business, how will it improve the people I'm working with, and
you enjoying it along the way.
And love it. Right.
Awesome. Craig,
absolute pleasure.
Thank you for being on the show.
Thanks, Sean.
Thanks for watching. Make sure you like, comment, share and review, and be sure to subscribe to Beyond Business with Sean Nicholas.